Hello, I am Nathan Eaton, the Assistant Director of Financial Aid here at Methodist College. Welcome to the Financial Aid portion of New Student Orientation. This presentation is going to kind of just go over some general information that's good for everyone to know. But as always, if you do have questions, please do not hesitate to reach out to us. As I mentioned, my name is Nathan Eaton. Our other members of our Financial Aid staff are Angie Robinson. She's the Director of Financial Aid. Also our VA liaison here on campus. Janet Ozuna is our financial aid advisor. So some of you likely have already had contact with her. She's our kind of first contact person with students. And if you have any questions, she's always a great person to go to. And then also we have Alicia Wolf, who also many of you probably talked to as part of the admissions process. She also does help with the financial aid in some ways as well. So she can answer some general questions. You'll often see her at the front window of student services. So we'll go ahead and get started. Now this slide is our map of campus. Once you do come to campus, when you enter in entrance 1 at the front of the building, you'll turn left across the lobby and enter into the student services area. You would check in at the window there, and then they'd call and let us know that you're here, and one of us would come up to speak with you. Ideally, we'd have you set up an appointment. We do allow for walk-ins, but just to ensure someone's available to speak with you, we always recommend set up an appointment before coming in. Now this next slide just kind of gives a general overview of how financial aid is adjusted. So in order to qualify for federal student loans, you must be enrolled in at least 6 credit hours in the semester. And for federal student loans, once you're in those 6 credit hours, you're offered your full loan eligibility. So whether you're in 6 hours or 12 hours, there's no change in that loan eligibility. It does not increase. You just have to at least be in 6 hours to qualify for it. Now if you do qualify for the federal Pell Grant, it is awarded in quarters. So to get your full maximum Pell Grant in a semester, you must be at least in 12 credit hours or a full-time student. If you're in 9 to 11 hours, you're considered a 3/4 time student, so you get 3/4 of your eligibility. If you're in 6 to 8 credit hours, you're a half-time student, so you get half your eligibility. And then if you're in 5 or less hours, you're considered a less than half-time student, so essentially you get 1/4 of your eligibility for that semester. And then if you also qualify for the Illinois MAP Grant, it's awarded a little bit different than the Pell Grant. It's awarded by credit hour, but you have to at least be in 3 credit hours, and it maxes out at 15 credit hours. But with each credit hour you add, that MAP Grant award does go up. So just keep that in mind as you're enrolling in classes, how that different aid has different requirements and is awarded a little differently for each kind. Now the next item we want to discuss are just the loan limits that are set on the federal student loans, both for a given semester, but also there are lifetime limits as well. So what decides in part your loan eligibility in a given semester is whether you're considered a dependent student or an independent student. So if you're a dependent student, you would have been required to include your parent information on the FAFSA, and since your parent information is being included, the Department of Education assumes your parents would be assisting with paying for your education, so you qualify for less student loans in any given semester. And also as a dependent student, the maximum you can get over your lifetime as a dependent student is $31,000 in federal student loans. As an independent student, since you are viewed as on your own by the Department of Education, you qualify for more student loans every semester, and your lifetime limit is $57,500. Now if you start college as a dependent student and then become an independent student due to age, or you get married or have children, then your maximum life eligibility goes up to that $57,500 as well. Something we always like to remind our independent students, but our second degree students or students who have a bachelor's degree previously, once you have a bachelor's degree, you'll only qualify for federal student loans. You no longer qualify for any of the federal Pell Grant or only MAP Grant once you have a bachelor's degree. And the maximum federal student loan an independent student could get in a given semester is $6,250. And we like to always emphasize that heavily, especially to our second degree students, because more often than not, that federal student loan eligibility by itself will not be enough to cover your full balance. And often you'll need to either set up a payment plan, apply for a private student loan, scholarships, things like that to help fill that funding gap that results from those limits of the federal loan program. Now, if you're a graduate student, all graduate students are considered independent students, and your lifetime limit once you reach a graduate level goes up from $57,500 up to $138,500. Now, any loans you borrowed previously for your undergraduate degree still applies toward that lifetime limit, but obviously it's increased greatly to give you more space for borrowing while you're in graduate school. And also a graduate student can get up to $10,250 per semester in unsubsidized loans. Now there's two different kinds of loans you may qualify for. There's subsidized loans, which no interest bills on those loans while you're in school, and unsubsidized loans, which the interest will start building on those loans as soon as you take out those loans. So we always recommend, whenever possible, try to only take out your subsidized loans, but for many of you, it'll be a combination where part of your loan eligibility is in subsidized loan, and then the rest is in an unsubsidized loan combined together for your full eligibility. Now, just like how the federal student loans have lifetime limits, the grant assistance provided also has lifetime limits as well. So for the federal Pell Grant, the way they base eligibility on for lifetime eligibility is one full semester is 12 credit hours, and essentially you can qualify for up to 12 semesters as a full-time student in the federal Pell Grant program. Now, if you take less than 12 hours, so say if you're a half-time student taking 6 credit hours, then that only counts as using half your eligibility for that semester. So you essentially would then have 11 and a half semesters left in Pell Grant eligibility going forward if it's your first semester. And then for the Illinois MAP grant, since it's measured by hours paid, since the state of Illinois pays you per credit hour, the lifetime maximum is 135 credit hours paid. But there is some wiggle room in that. So say you're going to your last semester and you're at 130 hours that have been paid, you can still receive, if you're enrolled in 10 credit hours, you can still be paid for those full 10 hours, even though it brings you over that 135 hour max. It's just after that point, you would then be at your limit. You won't qualify for any more MAP grant going forward. Now, with less than full-time enrollment, we always recommend working with your advisor to figure out what works best for you academically, but then always come talk to us with financial aid to make sure it works financially for you for that semester. As I mentioned before, with the federal student loans, once you're in 6 credit hours, you receive your maximum eligibility for those federal student loans. So even if you're in 15 credit hours, those loans don't increase at all to make up that difference of that increased cost of tuition fees from being in more credit hours. And while the federal Pell Grant and Illinois MAP grant will increase as you add hours, the grant assistance does not keep pace with the cost of tuition and fees, so you would most likely still have a due balance possibly as you're adding more hours. But we always recommend, if you're going to be taking lesson full time on a regular basis, to come talk to us in the financial aid office, especially in regards to student loans, because if you're taking out that maximum loan each semester, but you're not progressing as a full-time student, you risk using your full loan eligibility before reaching graduation. So that's just something to keep in mind. If on a regular basis you'll be taking less than full-time status, especially if you're taking a half-time status, that's 6 to 8 hours, come talk to us so we can kind of chart out your program with you and just project things out to make sure you have enough aid to get you through graduation. Now with communication, now that you're in new student orientation, you'll now have a Methodist College student email account, and that's where all the communication from us is going to go to from this point forward. So before this, we've been mailing things to your home or emailing to your personal email account. Now that you're officially a student, we're only going to email to that student account. So it's very important you're checking that on a regular basis, at minimum on a weekly basis, but I always recommend daily. just because if we need something from you or there's an issue, that's how we're going to reach out to you to notify you of the situation. Now, we always like to mention this, since a majority of our students who attend the college will end up taking out federal student loans. There are additional steps in addition to just accepting your student loan, which you'll need to do every semester. You want to take out loans, you'll have to accept them through your student portal. But if it's your first time taking out a student loan, you'll also need to complete online entrance loan counseling and an online master promissory note as part of that loan process. So the entrance counseling just kind of goes over the general loan information with you. Takes around 15 minutes to complete. It has you do some budgeting to kind of project out how much you might borrow in the long term, things like that. So it's just a kind of a informational tool that the Department of Education likes you to take, just to kind of get familiar with those federal student loans before you take them out. Then the master promissory note is the actual agreement with the Department of Education that you plan on paying back this loan once you're done in school. It does take about 10 minutes to complete, and it does ask for 2 references. You'll need their name, address, and phone number. They can't live at the same address, but it's pretty open-ended on who can be your reference. It can be any family members, any friends. They're not responsible for your loan in any way, even though they're being put down as a reference. They're just simply used for once you go in repayment on your student loan. If for some reason your loan servicer, while you're in repayment, can't get a hold of you, they're just going to reach out to your references to try and get your updated contact information. But like I said, the loan will always just be under you. Your references would never be responsible for that loan. Now this is the studentaid.gov website you'd go to complete those loan steps. So when you go to that website, you'll click that complete aid process link, and then it'll take you through the steps from there as far as what you need to complete as far as the interest loan counseling and that master promissory note. We'll be sending you reminder emails on the steps on how to complete those within the next couple of weeks as you're getting enrolled in classes. So we'll be sending out more detailed instructions if you have issues with that. But like I said, that's just a required part of the process before we can process the loan for you and have those loan items done as well. Now, if you're thinking you're in a need, or you already know you're applying for additional financial assistance, for example, a Parent Plus loan, dependent students, your parents can apply for what's called a Parent Plus loan, which would be them applying for a loan on your behalf. That can be used to help cover any remaining tuition fees, but also could be used to take out additional funds to get a refund to help with living expenses like rent and transportation, food, things like that. If you're a graduate student, it's a similar concept. Your regular unsubsidized loan that you get from applying for the FAFSA doesn't require a credit check, but the Parent Plus loan, there's a credit check as part of that process. Then graduate students can apply for a Graduate Plus loan, which is a similar process as a credit check, but then it allows you to borrow additional funds to help cover any remaining tuition fees, living expenses, things like that. If you are a veteran and applying for VA benefits, you'll want to reach out to Angie Robinson, our Director of Financial Aid. She's also our VA liaison here on campus, so she'd be the person to talk to about making sure those benefits are up to date on your account. And if you have any questions with the process, she'll be able to help you with that. If you're looking at alternative loans or private student loans, you can actually apply through our website. We have a link to what's called Elm Select, and you can actually compare different lenders and actually apply through that portal. Once again, alternative loans can be used if your federal student loans are not enough to cover your full balance. You can use those to cover any remaining balance. Then once again, you can borrow additional private loan for living expenses and things like that. One thing to keep in mind with those is generally you would be required to have a co-signer with you to be approved for those. It's pretty rare for them to approve a student by themselves, but it does happen on occasion. And then also if you're looking at outside scholarships or grants, definitely let us know. Sometimes your outside funding source will need some sort of documentation from us just confirming you're enrolled, but also so our bursar is aware that those funds are coming in, so she knows that the balance will be covered by, or part of that balance will be covered by that scholarship or grant once it does come in. If you are looking at a Parent Plus loan, Grad Plus loan, there is a separate electronic application that would have to be done as part of that process. The VA form is still in production. Like I said, Angie Robinson would be the person to speak with. And then if you do have questions about private student loans, we do have a page on our website that gives you a little more information on that process. Now, additional paperwork and steps. As part of the financial aid process, often we do need additional items past just doing the FAFSA before we can actually determine your eligibility for financial aid. As I mentioned before this point of orientation, if we needed something, we've been mailing things to you or emailing your personal email account. But if we need anything going forward, we'll email to your student email account. The most common reason we need additional paperwork is what's called a verification process. The Department of Education selects 1 in 3 students for verification, and essentially it's their way of spot checking to make sure the information on the FAFSA is correct. It doesn't mean that you've done anything incorrect. It's just kind of a safety net to make sure information on FAFSA is correct as people are going through the process. We just ask that you turn in the required paperwork and documents as soon as possible, because in most cases we're not able to even award you financial aid without all those documents sent in to us. Now you might have received an award letter from us, which gives you an estimate of your eligibility, but now that you're enrolled in classes, we can't give you your official awards based on your enrollment until all documents are turned in to us. Now, refunds. So if you are going to be depending on financial aid refunds, be it from Parent Plus loans, private student loans, whatever the source may be, keep in mind some of the refund date information and kind of how the process works if you're relying on those refunds for living expenses and outside expenses outside of just your tuition fees at the school. So usually for us, the earliest refunds are sent out in a given semester is about 30 days into the semester. Part of the reason that's the case is we have to wait till after the drop date when you can no longer drop classes to determine your final eligibility before processing that. And then it takes another week or so for us to process and then our bursar to issue those refunds, which is why it's about 30 days into the term. Now, things that can delay refunds is obviously failing to turn in documents to us that we need to finish the process, and that includes finishing that master promissory note and interest loan counseling as part of that loan process. But also, your refunds can't be issued until we received all the funds that are needed to issue that refund. So if you have an outside source of financial aid, like an outside scholarship, if you have a private student loan, any of those items, if the school hasn't received those funds, we can't issue the refund that would result from those. So just bear that in mind. That can delay refunds depending on when those outside sources of funds are received at the school. We always recommend keep an eye on your ledger. Your ledger is going to show you if you have a due balance, if you have a pending refund. So it's always important to keep an eye on that ledger so you're fully aware of your situation, so you don't have any surprises as far as a surprise balance, or you're expecting a larger refund and then you get a smaller one based on what you were expecting. Your ledger is always going to keep you up to date as far as the status of those things. Now we do ask for you, if you're adding or dropping classes, it can take up to a week for us to update your ledger as far as your aid's concerned, so just keep that in mind. If you drop a class today and check your ledger an hour later, there's a good chance your financial aid hasn't adjusted. Either if you added a class, it hasn't had a chance to increase financial aid, if that's what will occur, but similar, if you dropped a class, often the financial aid hasn't adjusted down based on your hours. So we just don't want you to think once again you're getting a larger refund or have a due balance. Just give us some time to update that ledger. Now, one very important item we like to highlight is the Illinois MAP grant. If you're receiving the Illinois MAP grant and having those funds applied to your tuition fees will result in a partial federal student loan refund, a Pell Grant refund, whatever the situation may be. Generally, the state of Illinois does not issue the funds for the Illinois MAP grant until around the end of the semester. So in the spring term, we wouldn't expect to receive those funds probably until early May in that area. So just keep that in mind, as the portion of your refund that may be issued from the Illinois MAP grant being received will be delayed until we receive those funds from the state, and likely that'll be toward the end of the semester before we receive those. So for contacting the financial aid office, just some tips as you're reaching out to us. If you do give us a call and we're not able to answer, please leave a voicemail with us. We will not call back just on this number if there's not a voicemail to go along with it. Just like everyone else, we receive spam calls and things like that. So just for security reasons, we will not call back just a blind number unless there is a voicemail left as well. If you're emailing us, please email us from your college student email account. That helps confirm for us who's reaching out to us, but also for security reasons, since we do have a lot of sensitive information in the financial aid office, it's just much more secure through that student email account that stays within our system, within the college email system. If you're emailing from your Hotmail or Yahoo account, obviously your email might be footballlover85, and we don't know who that is. And we don't know for sure if it is you, even if you're saying it in the email body who it is. So just for security reasons, we won't be able to email any detailed information to a personal email account, only to that student email account. If you do give us a call or send us an email, please allow for 2 business days for us to return your phone call or email. It rarely takes us that long to return, to give you a response, but especially at peak times, like as a semester is starting, it can take us a little bit longer to get a call back. And a big part of that is if you leave myself a voicemail, and then you leave another person in the office a voicemail, then we have 2 people working on your account, and it just eats up more time at busy times. So we do ask, just please give us a little time to respond before you call, leave another voicemail, or email another person, things like that. Also, if you're wanting a parent or a spouse or someone else to be able to talk to us in detail about your account, you will need to fill out a FERPA release form. Once again, due to the sensitivity of your information and privacy laws, we're not able to talk to anyone about your account unless you've given them permission to do so. Even if you're a dependent student and it's your parent, I know their information was required to be on your FAFSA. We're still limited on what we can talk to your parent about without that FERPA release form. And similar, if you're independent and have a spouse, we can't divulge things to your spouse without that release form. So just keep that in mind. If you have someone else who's helping you through the process, or who wants to be able to talk to us, just make sure you have that form completed. Now, understanding your ledger, the Bursar would have given you this as well, but it's very important to be able to understand how to read your ledger. We're always happy to answer questions for you, help you read your ledger, but we're always not available. We're primarily just here during regular business hours, Monday through Friday. So if it's the weekend, if it's the evening, we're not available to answer those questions for you on demand. If you're able to answer your ledger, often you're able to log in, check your ledger, and without problem be able to see if you have a balance, if you have a pending refund, things like that, and you're not having to wait for a response for when us get back to you. So we do always make sure you're looking at that ledger. If you do have questions about how to read it, please let us know, because it's just important for you to be able to read that on your own as well. Now, withdrawing from classes, this is a very important one. Anytime you're looking at withdrawing from either a single class, and definitely if you're looking at withdrawing from all your classes, please contact us. Withdrawing from your classes can affect your financial aid both in the current semester, where your financial aid might need to be reduced, in some situations even canceled completely, which could result in you having to do balance. So we want you to be aware of your situation before you take any action as far as withdrawing. And like I said, and also, especially if you're withdrawing from all classes, that often does result in financial aid being reduced and you possibly having a due balance from that. And also can have larger implications as far as long-term eligibility for financial aid if you're withdrawing from classes as well. And kind of on the flip side of that, or that goes along with that, if you're not attending your classes, so if you don't attend a class at all, that will eventually be reported by your instructor, and we would have to reduce your aid because you cannot receive financial aid for classes that you're not attending. Even though if you're enrolled in it, if you're not attending the class, we cannot give you financial aid for that class. And at the end of the semester, if you were to receive a failing grade in the class, we have to confirm that you actually completed the class, you didn't just stop attending. So once again, if you stopped attending the class partway through the semester, we may be required to go back and reduce your financial aid based on that failure to complete the class, even if it is a failing grade. So just make sure you're always reaching out to us if you have any concerns or issues with being able to complete a class or withdrawing, things like that. Now what happens next, so we'll be updating student accounts as quickly as possible as you register for classes, and we'll send up a follow email to help you understand your ledger and your aid. It can take a little bit longer because some of you will be registering completely or might already be registered completely, but if you have partial registration and our registrar has to register you in some of your classes, that's going to delay us getting your account updated. Some of you might have to wait to register because there's still a transcript or something like that. We'll get information to you as soon as possible, but we do ask if you're able to notify us once you do register, because that will speed up the process for when you'll get that follow-up email from us as far as your next steps and things like that. So as you're going through, once you get your account updated, remember to review your ledger to check for a due balance or a pending refund. Remember, you have to accept your student loans each semester, and they will not appear as pending on your ledger until you've accepted them, and then it takes about a 24-hour process for the account to update. So if you're looking at your ledger and you know you've been offered student loans but don't see them pending toward your balance, most likely the reason for that is you've not accepted them yet. The bursar will be providing you with payment plan information as needed, so you always have that option. Once you've accepted all the financial aid you're planning to accept, you've been fully awarded, there's still a due balance, you always have that option to have a payment plan to cover that remaining balance throughout the semester. Now, for the spring 2021 semester, the FAFSA that's needed to apply for aid is the 2020-2021 FAFSA. If you have not completed that yet, it's still not too late. You can still fill out that FAFSA to apply for aid. So we always recommend getting that done as soon as possible. We don't want you to go into the semester without knowing what your eligibility will be, and as a result not knowing what you're going to owe out of pocket. So if you have not done that FAFSA, do it as soon as possible so we can help you work through that process before classes start in the spring term. Now also, something to keep in mind when you go in to do that FAFSA, if you have not already, you'll see there's actually two FAFSAs available at this point in the year. So the 2021-2022 FAFSA is also available, which applies for financial aid for the summer of 21, fall of 21, and spring of 22, so next school year. So we do recommend getting that done as soon as possible. There is some aid, especially the state of Illinois assistance, like the MAP grant, that will often have a deadline earlier in the year. So the sooner you can get that completed, the better, just to ensure that you're within the deadline for any of that aid as you're going through the process. So if you've already done your 2020-21 FAFSA, that's excellent. If not, like I said, it's not too late. Please do it as soon as possible. But for everyone, if you have not already, go ahead and do that 2021-22 FAFSA as well, just so you already have it on the books and you're kind of have that first step for next year already completed. Now the financial aid packet, that's along with the new student orientation information, kind of highlights a lot of information we did in the presentation as far as just good information to know. We're including cost sheets to help give you ideas for tuition fees as you're registering for classes. Obviously, once you fully register, your ledger will show you what your full charges will be for the semester. And then just another limit sheet that just gives a summary of your aid limits for the semester, or sorry, for your aid programs as you're progressing through the school. So for contacting us right now, the best way is still probably through our student email account. So emailing from your student email account We have our general financial aid account, the financial aid at methodistcollege.edu. Of course, if you have mine, personal email account, or anyone else, you can always email us directly as well, but in general, this is just the best way to contact us because all of us in the office have access to this email account. So, if someone's out of the office, be on vacation, or they're out ill, if you're emailing this account, someone will be able to see it that same day. You're of course always welcome to give us a call if you have a situation you feel like might be hard to convey over email, things like that. Just keep in mind if we have a situation where we have to go back to working remotely, things like that. It might take us a little bit longer to return phone calls just because we might have limited access to our voicemail, things like that. But you're always welcome to give us a call, and just bear in mind it might take an extra day or so to get a response back to us. But we're here to help you through this process, so do not hesitate if you do have any questions. Have a good day.